The moon was bleeding tonight, crimson and swollen, hanging in the sky like a wound that refused to close. Lysan Rival stood barefoot on the ceremonial stone, the cold granite biting into her skin with the cruelty of teeth. Around her, the High Ridge pack formed a suffocating circle, their bodies pressed close, their breath hot with anticipation. The air reeked of pine smoke and bloodlust and judgment. Always judgment. This was supposed to be sacred. The night of the mating bond. The night the moon goddess herself blessed unions and forged destinies. But for Lysan, this was an execution, dressed in ritual. The drums began, deep, thunderous, each beat slamming into her chest like a fist against her ribs. She could barely breathe. The thin ceremonial robe they'd wrapped around her body did nothing to protect her from the cold or from the eyes. So many eyes, watching, waiting, hungry. She was an Omega, the lowest rank, the weakest wolf, a disgrace wrapped in flesh. And tonight, she was being given to a monster. Before we continue, please support us and hit the like and subscribe button and tell me what's the weather like in your location. I love to know. Now let's dive back in. Varus Keterin stood across from her, bathed in torchlight, his face carved from cruelty and arrogance. He was the future alpha, golden-haired, broad-shouldered, everything the pack worshipped, and he despised her. She could see it in the curve of his smile, in the way his eyes traveled over her body like she was meat on a hook. Not a person, not even a wolf, just a thing he would own. The memory clawed at her throat. 2 days ago, behind the training pit, his voice low and venomous as he cornered her against the stone wall. When the moon chooses, I'll take you, whether you beg or not. She had begged. Oh, she had begged, tears streaming down her face, voice breaking, hands trembling. She had begged him to let her go, to choose someone else, to spare her. He'd laughed, and then he'd pressed closer, his breath hot against her ear, and whispered, "An Omega's only purpose is to submit, and I'm going to enjoy teaching you that lesson every single night." Her stomach twisted at the memory. Bile rose in her throat. She forced it down. Elder Korath stepped forward now, ancient and gnarled, his voice rasping like dead leaves scraping stone. He raised the ceremonial bowl high, the moon-blessed water inside, shimmering with an eerie silver light. "Varus Keterin," the elder intoned, his words echoing across the silent clearing. "Do you accept this bond, forged by the will of the goddess, and swear to claim and command your mate, Lysan Rival, for all your days?" Varus's smile widened. Predatory, possessive. "I accept," he growled, his voice rolling through the circle like thunder. He didn't look at her. He looked past her, at his father, at the pack elders, at the future he was claiming. She was just part of the prize. Elder Korath turned to her. His milky eyes bore into hers, cold and indifferent. "Lysan Rival, do you accept this bond and submit to your alpha as the goddess decrees?" Submit. The word tasted like poison. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it would explode. Her hands were shaking. Her knees threatened to buckle. Every instinct in her body was screaming, screaming to run, screaming to fight, screaming to do anything but stand there and let this happen. But she couldn't move. Varus took a step toward her. Then another. The crowd leaned in, their breaths held, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. His hand reached out, fingers curling like claws, ready to seize her wrist and drag her forward into the binding. And in that moment, Lysan Rival made a choice. She stepped backward, a forbidden act, a rejection of the moon's will. The circle erupted, gasps, snarls, shouts of outrage. Wolves shifted, their bodies rippling with fury, their eyes flashing gold in the darkness. "Don't!" Varus hissed, his face twisting with rage. "Don't you dare embarrass me!" But she wasn't thinking about him. She wasn't thinking about the pack, or the elders, or the sacred bond. She was thinking about the one desperate, impossible hope she'd buried deep in her chest 3 weeks ago. A contract, signed in blood, hidden in shadows, a marriage to a paralyzed wolf, a man no one wanted, a man who couldn't hurt her, a man who only needed someone to tend him in his final days, a marriage of convenience. No claim, no dominance, no mating bite, just safety. And tonight, there was a carriage waiting for her in the ravine, a carriage that would take her away from this nightmare forever. Lysanne ran. The torches flared. The pack howled. The earth shook beneath the thunder of pounding paws as a dozen trackers surged into the forest behind her, their snarls tearing through the night. She didn't look back. Her bare feet slammed against the frozen ground, branches whipping at her face, tearing at her robe. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred with tears. But she ran, faster than she'd ever run in her life. Behind her, Varos's voice roared through the trees. "Bring her back! Bring her back, or I'll tear every one of you apart." The ravine. She had to reach the ravine. She crashed through the underbrush, stumbling, falling, dragging herself back up. The howls were getting closer, closer. She could hear their breathing now, hot and ragged, could smell their fury on the wind. And then she saw it. The carriage, black, sleek, waiting in the shadows beneath the ancient pines. The horses stamped nervously, their eyes rolling white. A cloaked figure stood beside the door, his face hidden beneath a hood. Lysanne stumbled forward, gasping, sobbing, blood streaming from cuts on her hands and feet. "Please," she choked out. "Please. I signed the contract. I paid. Please." The figure looked at her, cold, unreadable. "Full payment received," he said flatly. "Contract sealed. Get in." She didn't hesitate. She threw herself into the carriage, collapsing onto the plush velvet seat, her entire body shaking with exhaustion and terror. The door slammed shut, the horses bolted, and the world she knew ended. She pressed her face against the window, watching as the forest blurred past, watching as the torches of the High Ridge pack faded into distant flickering stars, watching as Varus's howl of rage echoed through the mountains one last time before silence swallowed it whole. She was safe. She was free. She had escaped. Or so she believed. 3 weeks earlier, Lysanne had been in hell. Varus had cornered her in the grain storage, his body blocking the door, his smile sharp as broken glass. He'd grabbed her wrist, twisting it until she cried out, and then he'd leaned close, his breath reeking of mead and cruelty. "You're mine, little Omega," he'd whispered. "The elders have already approved the bond. In 3 weeks, you'll be kneeling at my feet. And if you try to run..." His grip tightened until she felt bone grinding against bone. "I'll make sure you never walk again." He'd released her then, laughing as she collapsed to the floor, clutching her wrist, tears streaming down her face. That night, she'd gone to the border medic, an old woman named Gressa, who treated outsiders and outcasts without asking questions. Gressa had wrapped her wrist, her wrinkled hands gentle, her eyes sad. "You can't keep living like this, girl," Gressa had murmured. "He'll kill you. Maybe not right away, but eventually." Lysanne had said nothing. What was there to say? Omegas didn't get choices. Omegas didn't get freedom. But then Gressa had leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There's a rumor, out in the outer territories. A wolf named Erith Falren used to be a warrior, powerful, respected. But there was an ambush. Rogues. They left him paralyzed from the waist down. He's been living alone ever since, rotting in some forgotten estate, waiting to die." Lysanne had frowned, confused. "Why are you telling me this?" Gressa's eyes had gleamed. "Because he put out a contract. A marriage contract. Any Omega willing to tend him in his final days. He'll marry her. Legally. Binding. No mating bite. No claim. Just a name. Protection. Safety." Lysanne's heart had stuttered. Why would he do that? Pride, Gressa had said simply. He doesn't want to die alone and helpless. He wants someone there. Someone to witness that he was still a wolf, even at the end. And in that moment, Lysanne had seen it. The way out. A marriage to a dying, paralyzed wolf. A wolf who couldn't hurt her, couldn't dominate her, couldn't claim her. A wolf who just needed someone to hold a cup of water to his lips while he faded into nothing. It wasn't freedom, but it was survival. And survival was all she had left. She'd signed the contract the next day. In secret, in blood. The broker had been a thin, sharp-faced man who'd looked at her with empty eyes and said, "Payment is due on the night of your escape. The carriage will be waiting in the ravine. Don't be late." She'd agreed. And now, here she was, sitting in that carriage, trembling, bleeding, free. But something was wrong. The carriage wasn't heading toward the outer territories. It was heading up, into the mountains, higher and higher, the air growing colder, the trees giving way to jagged stone cliffs and snow-capped peaks. She pressed her face to the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Where are we going?" she whispered. No answer. The horses didn't slow. And then, through the mist, she saw it. A fortress, massive, ancient, built into the mountainside itself, its walls black as midnight, its towers clawing at the sky like the bones of some long-dead god. Obsidian and iron and shadow. This wasn't a cottage. This wasn't some forgotten estate where a crippled wolf waited to die. This was a palace. The carriage rolled through gates that groaned open like the jaws of a beast. Soldiers lined the courtyard, their armor gleaming silver, their faces hidden beneath helms. They didn't speak, didn't move, just watched as the carriage came to a stop. The door opened. A woman stood there, tall, regal, her hair silver, her eyes cold as ice. "Welcome, Lady Lysanne," the woman said, her voice smooth as silk and just as suffocating. "You must be exhausted. Come, we've prepared a chamber for you." Lysanne's voice cracked. Where is Erith Falron?" The woman's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "All will be explained in time. For now, rest." Lysanne tried to protest, tried to demand answers, but her body betrayed her. Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave, dragging her under. Her vision blurred. Her legs gave out. Strong hands caught her, lifted her, carried her through corridors of stone and shadow, through halls lit by flickering torches that cast dancing shapes on the walls. And then, darkness. She was safe from Varos, but not from whatever waited behind those obsidian doors. Warmth. That was the first thing Lysanne felt when she woke. Not cold stone, not fear, just warmth and a heartbeat. Steady, slow, rhythmic, pulsing beneath her cheek like the beat of some great drum. Her eyes fluttered open. She was lying in a bed. No, not just a bed. A massive bed, obsidian frame, white velvet sheets, pillows so soft they felt like clouds. Candles flickered on iron sconces, casting golden light across a vaulted ceiling carved with lunar symbols and ancient runes. And she wasn't alone. Her head was resting on someone's chest, a broad, muscular chest, bare skin, warm, scarred. She froze. Her gaze traveled upward. Silver hair spilled across the pillow, long and wild, framing a face that looked like it had been carved by the gods themselves and then shattered and put back together. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, scars crisscrossing his neck and shoulders, and a crown, dark iron and bone, resting on the nightstand beside the bed. The man holding her was enormous, terrifyingly beautiful, and he was asleep. His arm was draped over her ribs, possessive, protective, his breathing deep and even. Panic slammed into her chest like a fist. She tried to move, tried to pull away, but the moment she shifted, his grip tightened. Not painful, just firm, like he knew, even in sleep, that she was trying to leave. And then his eyes opened, cold, glacial, electric blue. The air in the room seemed to shift, to thicken. Power rolled off him in waves, pressing down on her like a physical weight. Her wolf, weak and trembling, whimpered deep inside her chest. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then his voice broke the silence. Deep, rough, like thunder rolling across distant mountains. "You're awake." Lysanne's throat closed. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Who are you?" she gasped. He studied her, his expression unreadable. And then he sat up slowly, the sheets pooling around his waist, revealing a torso covered in scars. Battle scars, claw marks, burn marks, the body of a man who had been torn apart and somehow survived. "Azeron Vale," he said softly. "Alpha King, your husband." Her blood turned to ice. "No," she whispered. "No. I married a crippled wolf, Erith Falren, a paralyzed warrior. Not you. Not. You married a name," Azeron said, his voice calm. Too calm. "A mask. A lie meant to bring you safely to me." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face with unexpected gentleness. She flinched, but he didn't pull away. "Erith Falren doesn't exist, Lysanne," he continued. "He never did. The contract was a trap, a protection spell. Only a wolf with rare, dormant power could trigger it. And you," his eyes searched hers, something almost sad flickering in their depths. "You did." Her mind was spinning, fragments of thought crashing together, making no sense. "I don't understand," she choked out. "Why? Why would you?" "Because I need you," Azeron said simply, and then he pulled back the collar of his shirt, revealing a mark on his shoulder, a glowing, intricate symbol that pulsed with silver light. And when Lysanne looked down at her own shoulder, she saw it, the same mark, burning faintly beneath her skin. A Bont mark, not Varos's mark, not the High Ridge Pack's claim. Something ancient, something royal, something binding. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." She scrambled backward, off the bed, her legs tangling in the sheets. She hit the floor hard, gasping, her entire body shaking. Azeron didn't move. He just watched her, waiting. "You tricked me," she hissed, tears streaming down her face. "You lied. I saved you," he said quietly. "You chained me," she screamed. "I ran from one monster to escape another, and now I'm bound to a king." "A king?" Azeron's jaw tightened. For a moment, something dangerous flickered in his eyes, but then it was gone, replaced by that same calm, unreadable mask. "You may fear me," he said, his voice low and steady, "but fate has chosen you, Lysanne Rivel, and fate does not make mistakes." She wanted to run, wanted to claw at the walls until her fingers bled, wanted to scream until her voice gave out, but the bond mark on her shoulder pulsed, warm, insistent, pulling her back toward him like an invisible chain. She was trapped. Again, the palace was a labyrinth of stone and shadow. Lysanne spent the next 2 days wandering its halls, trying to find an exit, trying to find some way out. But every door she opened led to another corridor, another locked gate, another dead end. And everywhere she went, servants watched her. They didn't speak, didn't bow, just watched, with eyes full of suspicion and something else, something that looked almost like hope. On the 3rd day, she cornered one of them, a young woman with auburn hair and tired eyes. "Why does everyone look at me like that?" Lysanne demanded. The woman hesitated. Then, in a whisper, "Because you're still alive." Lysanne frowned. "What?" The woman glanced around nervously, then leaned closer. "The king. He's cursed. Every full moon, he loses control. His wolf takes over, becomes feral, uncontrollable, murderous. The last woman who tried to help him." She swallowed hard. "They found her in pieces." Lysanne's stomach dropped. "Why?" she whispered. "Why is he cursed?" "No one knows," the woman said. "It's been like this for years. The healers say it's killing him. Slowly, that one day, the beast won't give him back. And when that happens," she shook her head, "we'll all die with him." Lysan's mind raced. Then why bring me here? Why bind me to him if he's— The prophecy, the woman interrupted. There's a prophecy. It says only a wolf with the white flame lineage can soothe the madness, can calm the beast, can save him. White flame. The word stirred something deep inside Lysan's chest. A flicker, a spark. Her wolf, always so weak and trembling, suddenly stirred, just for a moment, like it recognized something. I don't know what that means, Lysan said hoarsely. The woman's eyes filled with pity. Then you'd better figure it out, because the full moon is tomorrow night. Meanwhile, in the High Ridge Pack, Varos Keterin stood in the center of the Elder's chamber, his fists clenched, his eyes burning with rage. She rejected me, he snarled. In front of the entire pack, she humiliated me. Elder Korath nodded slowly. She broke the sacred law. Then give me permission to hunt her down, Varos demanded. Give me the trackers. I'll drag her back here. And— No. Varos froze. What? The Elder's milky eyes gleamed. She is no longer yours to claim, Varos. The bond was rejected. The moon did not accept her submission. Then I'll kill her, Varos hissed. You will do nothing, the Elder said sharply, because the moon has spoken, and if you defy her will, you will bring her wrath upon this pack. Varos's jaw clenched, his claws extended, digging into his palms until blood dripped onto the stone floor. But he didn't argue. He just smiled, a slow, cruel smile. Fine, he said softly. I won't hunt her. The Elder nodded, satisfied. But as Varos turned to leave, he whispered under his breath, too low for the Elder to hear, but I will find her. And when I do, his eyes burned with fury. She will wish she had accepted the bond. The full moon rose like a pale, merciless eye. Lysan stood at the window of her chamber, her arms wrapped around herself, her heart pounding. The palace was eerily silent. No footsteps, no voices, just waiting. And then she heard it. A roar. Not a human sound. Not even a wolf's howl. Something monstrous. The walls shook. Glass shattered. Somewhere deep in the palace, something was breaking loose. Lysan's door burst open. The silver-haired woman from before, the one who'd greeted her at the carriage, stood there, her face pale. You need to leave, she said urgently. Now, before he— Another roar. Closer this time. Before he what? Lysan demanded. Before the curse takes him completely, the woman hissed. Every full moon, the king becomes a monster. And tonight— Her eyes filled with fear. Tonight feels different, worse, like the beast is finally winning. Lysan's breath caught. Where is he? The throne room. But you can't. Lysan didn't wait. She ran, through the corridors, down the spiraling stairs, following the sound of snarls and crashing stone. And then she saw him. Azeron Vale, Alpha King, on his knees in the center of the throne room, his body convulsing, his back arching unnaturally. His eyes burned red, not blue, red, like fire, like blood. His claws had extended, long and black, tearing into the stone floor. His fangs— gods. His fangs were enormous, jutting from his mouth like daggers. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a beast. Palace guards surrounded him, weapons drawn, but none of them dared get close. They were shouting at her. Run, my lady, run. He'll kill you. Please. You have to. But Lysan couldn't move. The bond mark on her shoulder was burning. Not painful, just warm, insistent, pulling her forward. Azeron's head snapped toward her. His red eyes locked onto hers, and he lunged. Lysan's breath stopped, but instead of tearing her apart, he collapsed at her feet, his massive body slamming into the ground, his breathing ragged, his claws scraping against the stone as he tried to crawl toward her. He was fighting it, fighting the beast, and losing. Lysan's hands trembled. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far away as possible. But then she heard it. His voice, barely a whisper, barely human. Please, That one word shattered something inside her. She dropped to her knees beside him, and she touched him, her hand pressed against his chest, right over his heart. The moment her skin made contact, light exploded. White light, blinding, pure. It poured from her hand, spreading across Azeron's body like wildfire, wrapping around him, sinking into his skin. The red in his eyes flickered, faded, his claws retracted, his breathing slowed, and then, with a shuddering gasp, he collapsed against her, not as a beast, as a man, trembling, exhausted, broken. He pressed his face into her shoulder, his arms wrapping around her waist, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. "How?" he rasped. "How did you?" Lysan stared at her hands. White sparks still flickered beneath her skin, fading slowly. Her wolf, her weak, pathetic, trembling wolf, had just saved the Alpha King's life. The palace guards stood frozen, staring at her in shock, in awe. One of them whispered, "She's the one." The white flame. Azeron pulled back just enough to look at her. His blue eyes were raw, vulnerable. "What am I?" Lysan whispered, her voice breaking. Azeron's hand came up, cupping her face with a gentleness that didn't match his size. "Mine," he murmured, "and salvation itself." The High Priestess was ancient, older than the stones, older than the trees. Her skin was wrinkled parchment, her hair white as snow, her eyes milky and blind. But when she spoke, her voice was sharp as a blade. "The White Flame Bloodline," she said, her words echoing through the temple chamber, "was hunted into extinction centuries ago." Lysan sat across from her, Azeron standing behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder, protective, anchoring. "Why?" Lysan asked hoarsely. The priestess smiled, a sad, bitter smile. "Because they were too powerful. Omegas with the strength of alphas. Wolves who could heal with a touch, destroy with a thought. They didn't submit. They didn't kneel. And the alphas," she shook her head, "the alphas feared them." Lysan's chest tightened. "My parents hid you," the priestess finished, "suppressed your wolf, wrapped you in spells and prayers to keep your power dormant. They died protecting that secret." Tears burned in Lysan's eyes. "I thought I was weak. I thought my wolf was broken." "Your wolf was never weak," Azeron said quietly. "It was caged." The priestess nodded. "And now the cage is breaking. The bond with the king has awakened what your parents tried to hide. Your power is returning. Slowly, painfully, but it is returning." Lysan looked down at her hands. They were trembling again. White sparks flickered beneath her skin, faint but undeniable. "What happens now?" she whispered. The priestess leaned forward. "Now, you learn to control it, before it consumes you, before it consumes him." She gestured to Azeron. "The curse in his blood is ancient," she continued. "A punishment for a sin his ancestor committed. Every full moon, the beast tries to take him. And every full moon, he fights, but he's losing. His body is breaking. His mind is fracturing. Without you." She paused. "He will die. Or worse, he will become the monster permanently." Lysan's breath caught. "And with me?" "With you," the priestess said softly, "he might survive." That night, Azeron taught her breathing rituals. They sat together on the floor of his chamber, facing each other, knees almost touching. His voice was calm, patient, guiding her through the exercises. "Breathe in for 4 counts, he said. "Hold for 4. Breathe out for 4. Let the wolf feel your heartbeat. Let it know you're in control." Lysan tried, but every time she closed her eyes, she felt the power stirring inside her. Wild, untamed, terrifying. "I can't," she gasped, her eyes flying open. "I can't control it." Azeron reached out, taking her hands in his. His grip was firm, steady. "You can," he said quietly, "because you already have. When I was losing myself to the curse, you brought me back. You didn't think, you didn't plan. You just did it. Lisanne's eyes filled with tears. I was terrified. So was I, Azeron admitted. Every full moon, I'm terrified. Terrified I'll hurt someone. Terrified I'll lose myself. Terrified I'll wake up covered in blood and not remember whose. He looked at her, his blue eyes raw and honest. But last night, he continued, for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid, 'cause you were there, and somehow that was enough. Lisanne stared at him, this terrifying, powerful, broken man who had tricked her, bound her, trapped her, and yet, when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw someone just as scared as she was. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. You don't have to know, Azeron said softly. You just have to try. That night, for the first time since she'd arrived, Lisanne slept without nightmares, because Azeron sat beside her bed all night, watching over her, making sure nothing could hurt her, not even himself. Varos Keterin stood at the gates of the Obsidian Palace, flanked by a dozen warriors, his eyes burning with fury. Behind him, the High Ridge Pack elders watched from a distance, their faces grim. They hadn't approved this, but they hadn't stopped him either. The palace gates loomed before him, black iron and bone, guarded by soldiers in silver armor. Varos stepped forward. I am Varos Keterin, he announced, his voice echoing across the courtyard. Future Alpha of the High Ridge Pack. I have come to reclaim what is mine. The guards didn't move. One of them, a tall woman with a scarred face, spoke. The Obsidian Palace recognizes no claim from the High Ridge Pack. Leave, now. Varos's lip curled. The Omega Lisanne rival was bound to me by the moon's decree. She rejected the bond illegally. She used forbidden magic to escape. And now she hides behind your walls like a coward. The gates groaned, and then they opened. Azeron Vale stepped through. He was even bigger than Varos remembered. Taller, broader. His silver hair fell loose around his shoulders, his blue eyes cold as winter ice. He wore no crown, no armor, just simple, black clothing. But the power that radiated from him was suffocating. Varos forced himself to stand tall, to meet the king's gaze without flinching. Return her, Varos demanded. She is mine by... She is my queen, Azeron said quietly. The words hung in the air like a blade. Varos stared at him. What? Azeron's expression didn't change. Lisanne rival is my wife. Legally, magically, bound by contract and by blood. She is the queen of the Obsidian Kingdom. And you, he took a step forward, have no claim here. Varos's claws extended. You lie. She would never. She signed the contract willingly, Azeron interrupted. 3 weeks ago, she chose me over you. Rage exploded through Varos's chest. She tricked the bond. She used magic to... She used survival, Azeron said coldly. Because you are a monster. And she was desperate. Varos snarled, his body shifting, muscles rippling beneath his skin. I will tear this kingdom apart to get her back. Azeron didn't move, didn't blink. Try, he said softly, and the earth trembled. Not from an earthquake. From power. Raw, ancient, crushing power that pressed down on Varos like a mountain. His warriors stumbled backward, gasping, their wolves whimpering in terror. But Varos held his ground. Barely. She belongs to me, he hissed. She belongs to herself, Azeron said, and she chose to stay here, with me, if you want her. His eyes burned with cold fury. You'll have to go through me. Varos's jaw clenched. He knew he couldn't win. Not here. Not now. But he would find a way. He always found a way. He turned, gesturing to his warriors. "We're leaving." But as he walked away, he whispered, too low for Azeron to hear, "I will come back for her. And when I do, you'll both burn." Lysanne watched from the palace window as Varos and his warriors disappeared into the forest. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding. He'd come for her, just like she'd feared. And he would come again. "He won't stop," she whispered. Azeron stood beside her, his jaw tight. "I know. He'll bring an army next time," she continued, her voice trembling. "Let him," Azeron said quietly. Lysanne turned to him, eyes wide. "You can't fight an entire pack. You're one man." "I'm a king," Azeron interrupted, "and I've survived worse than Varos Keterin." But Lysanne could see the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. The curse was still killing him. Even with her help, every full moon drained him a little more. He couldn't survive a war, not like this. That night, Varos returned, but not with an army, with a blade. He came alone, slipping through the palace shadows like a ghost, bypassing guards, avoiding patrols. He'd studied the palace layout from afar, found the weakness in the defenses, and he headed straight for Lysanne's chamber. She was alone. Azeron had gone to meet with his council, discussing strategies, preparing for the inevitable attack. Lysanne sat by the window, staring out at the moonlit mountains, her mind spinning with fear and exhaustion. She didn't hear the door open, didn't hear the footsteps, didn't sense him until his hand clamped over her mouth and the cold edge of a blade pressed against her throat. "Hello, little Omega," Varos whispered in her ear. Lysanne's blood turned to ice. She tried to scream, but his hand tightened, cutting off the sound. The blade pressed harder, drawing a thin line of blood. "You thought you could escape me," Varos hissed. "You thought you could humiliate me in front of my pack and hide behind a king." He spun her around, slamming her against the wall, the blade now pressed to her chest, right over her heart. His eyes were wild, feral. Madness burned in their depths. "I've had wolfsbane coating this blade," he said, his voice trembling with rage. "One cut, and even your precious king won't be able to save you." Lysanne's breath came in short, panicked gasps. Her wolf stirred inside her chest, frightened, confused. "Please," she whispered. "Please, Varos, don't what?" he snarled. "Don't take what's mine. Don't punish you for your betrayal." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her face. "I was going to make you my mate," he said softly. "I was going to give you status, power, a place at my side. And you rejected me. You humiliated me. You ran." His hand moved to her throat, squeezing. "So now," he continued, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper, "I'm going to take everything from you, starting with your life. And then," he smiled, "I'm going to kill your king, slowly, painfully, while he watches your corpse grow cold." Lysanne's vision blurred. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But deep inside her chest, something stirred. Not Werewolf, something older, something burning. White fire. The door exploded inward. Azeron stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing blue, power rolling off him in waves. He saw Varos, saw the blade, saw Lysanne struggling against the wall. "Get away from her," he growled. Varos smiled. "Or what? You'll kill me, in front of all your witnesses." He gestured to the guards flooding into the corridor behind Azeron. "That would be a declaration of war. Your kingdom against my pack." "I don't care," Azeron said, taking a step forward. "You should," Varos hissed. And then he lunged. Not at Azeron, at Lysanne. The wolfsbane-coated blade drove toward her heart. Time seemed to slow. Lysanne saw the blade coming, saw the madness in Varos's eyes, saw Azeron launching himself forward, too far away to reach her in time. She was going to die, and in that moment, something inside her broke. Not broke, exploded. White light erupted from her body, blinding, searing, pure as starfire. It slammed into Varos like a physical force, throwing him backward across the room. He crashed into the opposite wall with a sickening crack, the blade flying from his hand. But Lisanne wasn't done. She stepped forward, her eyes glowing white, her hands trailing sparks. Power poured from her in waves, cracking the stone floor beneath her feet, shattering the windows, making the very air tremble. Azeron had managed to throw himself between her and Varos at the last second, taking the blade meant for her heart. It had buried itself in his shoulder, the wolfsbane burning through his veins like acid. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, blood pouring from the wound. And Lisanne snapped. "You hurt him," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like her own. It sounded ancient, powerful, terrifying. Varos struggled to his feet, his eyes wide with shock. "What? What are you?" Lisanne raised her hand. White flames danced along her fingers. Not fire, not heat, pure energy, pure power. Markings appeared on her arms, glowing silver, ancient symbols that spiraled from her wrists to her shoulders. Her hair lifted, floating around her face as if caught in an invisible wind. "I am the white flame," she said, her voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. "I am the bloodline you tried to destroy. I am the power you feared." She took another step forward. Varos stumbled backward, terror replacing the madness in his eyes. "I am not prey," Lisanne continued. "I am not weak. I am not yours." She thrust her hand forward. White light exploded from her palm, slamming into Varos, lifting him off his feet and throwing him through the doorway into the corridor beyond. He hit the ground hard, sliding across the stone, leaving a trail of blood. Palace guards surrounded him immediately, weapons drawn, but Varos wasn't moving. He was staring at Lisanne with wide, horrified eyes, his body trembling. "Impossible," he gasped. "You're just an Omega. You're wrong," Lisanne said coldly, and then she turned away from him, dropping to her knees beside Azeron. The moment she touched him, the white flames softened, becoming gentle, healing. She pressed her hands to his shoulder, to the wound, and the light sank into his skin. The wolfsbane burned away. The wound closed. Color returned to his face. Azeron looked up at her, his blue eyes wide with awe. "Lisanne," he breathed. She met his gaze, her eyes still glowing white, tears streaming down her face. "I won't let anyone hurt you," she whispered. "Not him. Not anyone." Azeron reached up, his hand cupping her face. "You were never meant to kneel," he said softly. And then the light faded. The markings disappeared. Lisanne's body went limp, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Azeron caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. The palace guards dragged Varos away, his screams of rage and disbelief echoing through the halls. They threw him into the deepest dungeon beneath the obsidian palace, iron chains laced with wolfsbane binding his wrists and ankles. Azeron's voice, cold and final, followed him into the darkness. "You will stand trial for attempted regicide and the assault of the Queen, and when you are found guilty, you will never see daylight again." But Lisanne didn't hear them. She was already unconscious, her body spent, her power drained, but safe. Finally, truly safe. Lisanne woke to sunlight, not the cold, grey light of the palace, but warm, golden sunlight streaming through tall windows, painting everything in soft amber hues. She was in Azeron's chamber, in his bed, wrapped in white silk sheets that smelled like pine and snow and something distinctly. Him. She sat up slowly, her body aching, her head pounding, memories flooded back. Varos. The blade. The power exploding from her body, the white flames. She looked down at her hands. They looked normal now. No sparks, no glow, just hands. But she could still feel it. The power, dormant but present, waiting. "You slept for 3 days." She jumped, turning to see Azeron standing in the doorway. He wore simple clothing, his silver hair pulled back, his blue eyes soft with concern. 3 days, she echoed hoarsely. He nodded, moving to sit on the edge of the bed. You drained yourself completely. The healers said, it's a miracle you survived. Using that much power without training. He shook his head. You could have killed yourself. Lysan swallowed hard. You were hurt. I had to. I know, Azeron said quietly. He took her hand in his thumb brushing over her knuckles. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lysan asked the question that had been burning in her chest since she'd woken beside him that first night. Why did you really bring me here? Azeron's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed. Because I was dying, he said simply. The curse was winning. Every full moon, it got harder to come back, harder to remember who I was. The healers said I had maybe a year left before the beast consumed me permanently. He looked at her, his eyes raw and honest. The prophecy said only a white flame could save me, he continued. But your bloodline was supposed to be extinct. I searched for years, sent spies to every pack, every territory, looking for any sign that one of you had survived. His hand tightened on hers. And then I heard about a young Omega in the High Ridge pack, he said softly. One whose wolf was weak, suppressed, hidden. I had my people investigate. And when I saw you, he paused. I knew. I could feel it. The power beneath the surface. The potential. Lysan's chest tightened. So you created the contract. The fake marriage. The paralyzed wolf. Azeron nodded. I knew you'd never come willingly. Not to a king. Not to someone with power. You'd been hurt too many times by alphas. So I gave you someone safe. Someone who couldn't hurt you. But you lied, Lysan whispered. Yes, Azeron said. I lied, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting that. He released her hand, standing, moving to the window. His back was to her, his shoulders tense. I won't force you to stay, he said quietly. The bond mark. I can break it. It will hurt. For both of us. But it can be done. Lysan stared at him, shocked. What? You never wanted this. Azeron continued, his voice strained. You never wanted a mate. Never wanted power. You just wanted to be safe. And I took that choice from you. I trapped you, just like Varos did. He turned to face her, and she saw pain in his eyes. Real, genuine pain. So I'm giving you the choice now, he said. Stay, leave. It's yours. No pressure, no manipulation. Just choose. Lysan's mind spun. She could leave, walk away, find some quiet corner of the world, and live in peace. No kings, no curses, no prophecies. Just freedom. But she thought about the way Azeron had sat beside her bed all night, keeping watch, making sure she was safe. The way he'd taught her breathing rituals with infinite patience, never once losing his temper when she failed. The way he'd thrown himself in front of a wolfsbane blade to protect her. The way he'd looked at her after she'd saved him from the curse, like she was the most miraculous thing he'd ever seen. He wasn't Varos. He'd lied to her, tricked her, bound her, but he'd also protected her, respected her. And now, he was offering her the one thing no one else ever had. A choice. I don't know if I love you, Lysan said quietly. Azeron's expression didn't change. I know. I don't know if I ever will. I know, but, Lysan continued, her voice strengthening. I know one thing. She stood, moving toward him, her bare feet silent on the stone floor. With you, she said, I'm not prey. I'm not powerless. I'm not invisible. She stopped in front of him, looking up into his blue eyes. With you? She whispered. I'm seen. Azeron's breath caught. I'm not staying because of fate, Lysan said firmly. Not because of prophecy. Not because of some bond mark that says we're meant to be together. She reached out, placing her hand over his heart. I'm staying because I want to, she said. Because for the first time in my life, I get to choose. And I choose this. I choose you. Azeron's eyes closed. He covered her hand with his, pressing it harder against his chest, against his heartbeat. I don't deserve you, he said hoarsely. Maybe not, Lysanne said with a small, sad smile. But you're what I've chosen, so you're stuck with me. Azeron opened his eyes, and for the first time since she'd met him, he smiled, really smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less like a terrifying king, and more like a man who'd been alone for far too long. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle, reverent. Then I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of that choice, he said softly, and when she placed her hand in his, the marriage mark blazed white fire. Not as a chain, not as a trap, but as a promise that she was free, free to choose, free to leave, free to stay, and she had chosen to stay, not because fate demanded it, not because prophecy required it, but because Lysanne Rivel, the Omega who once chose death over bondage, had finally found something worth living for, someone who saw her, truly saw her, not as prey, not as property, not as a pawn in some cosmic game, but as a queen, the white flame reborn, the woman who would stand beside the Alpha King and transform a kingdom built on fear into something new, something beautiful, something chosen. Epilogue. 6 months later, Lysanne stood on the balcony of the Obsidian Palace, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, she heard footsteps, felt strong arms wrap around her waist, pulling her back against a warm chest. You're up early, Azeron murmured against her hair. Couldn't sleep, she said softly. Nightmares? No. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Dreams. He raised an eyebrow. Good dreams? She smiled. A real smile. One that reached her eyes. The best. Azeron leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. They'd spent the last 6 months learning each other. Slowly, carefully, with no pressure, no expectations. He taught her to control her power. She taught him to trust again. He showed her the kingdom. She showed him how to laugh, and slowly, carefully, they'd built something neither of them expected. Not just a bond. A partnership. The council wants to hold a coronation ceremony, Azeron said quietly. Make your position as queen official. Lysanne tensed slightly. I don't need a crown to know who I am. I know, he said, but they do. The people need to see you. Need to know that their king has found his equal. He pulled back, his blue eyes searching hers. What do you say? He asked. Ready to be a queen? Lysanne thought about the girl she'd been 6 months ago, terrified, broken, running from one monster, only to fall into the arms of another. Or so she'd thought. She thought about the power that now lived inside her. Controlled, focused, no longer suppressed. She thought about the kingdom, spread out before her. Thousands of wolves who looked to Azeron for leadership. And now, to her, it terrified her, but it also excited her. Because for the first time in her life, she had a purpose, a reason, a choice. Yes, she said firmly. I'm ready. Azeron's smile was radiant. He took her hand, raising it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The marriage mark on her shoulder pulsed warmly. Not possessive, not controlling, just there, a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. Then let's show them, Azeron said softly. What happens when the white flame rises? And as the sun crested the mountains, bathing them both in golden light, Lysanne Rivel, once an Omega, once prey, once broken, stood tall, not because fate had chosen her, but because she had chosen herself, and that made all the difference. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button. Hit the like if you believe Omegas deserve autonomy. And drop a comment telling the council exactly what you think of their preparation chambers.